The Bermuda Triangle has captured imaginations with stories of vanished planes and ships, but now a new scientific theory claims to finally have the answer.
The ocean is still Earth's greatest blind spot. We search the stars for answers while ignoring what lies beneath our feet.
All reports at around 7:50 that night, they saw a fireball 100 feet high off the ocean floor that burned for 10 minutes.
Beneath a thin layer of water exists a world darker, older, and less understood than the surface of the moon. Almost the entire ocean floor remains unseen, untouched, and unexplored. And in one place, the ocean may be hiding a secret too big to ignore. The Bermuda Triangle is often mocked as a myth, but in 2001, engineers lowered an underwater drone into its depths, and what appeared on their screens forced them into silence for years. The ocean we never conquered. The ocean is the largest physical space on this planet, yet it remains the least understood. Humanity sends probes beyond the solar system, lands robots on Mars, and maps distant galaxies, but struggles to reach the depths directly beneath its own ships. The reason is simple and brutal. The deep sea is hostile in ways space is not. Crushing pressure increases with every meter. At depths of several hundred meters, it can destroy steel, implode hulls, and crush electronics in seconds. Light vanishes quickly. Radio waves fail. Human presence becomes impossible, and even machines operate on borrowed time. Exploration here is not heroic. It is slow, expensive, and unforgiving. Because of these limits, the deep ocean has been quietly abandoned. Satellites cannot see through water. Sonar mapping is costly and incomplete. Research vessels require massive funding, skilled crews, and months at sea. As a result, nearly 95% of the ocean floor remains unmapped in any meaningful detail. This is not poetic mystery or romantic unknown. It is a blind spot created by neglect. We simply do not look. Entire mountain ranges, valleys, and plateaus lie undocumented. Objects can rest on the seafloor for centuries without detection, not because they are hidden well, but because no one has searched for them. This ignorance has consequences. The ocean does not operate on human time. On land, cities crumble, forests reclaim ruins, and weather erases evidence. Underwater, time slows. Cold temperatures, low oxygen, and limited biological activity preserve structures far longer than on the surface. Shipwrecks from ancient times remain intact. Wood, metal, and stone survive in conditions that would destroy them on land. If something large were to sink suddenly and deeply, it could remain untouched for tens of thousands of years. The ocean does not forget quickly. That means the deep sea is not just a graveyard of ships. It is a vault. Entire chapters of Earth's history could lie sealed beneath layers of sediment and darkness. Not only wrecks, but coastlines that once existed, settlements built when sea levels were lower, and landscapes erased by rising waters. During ice ages, oceans were hundreds of meters lower than today. Land bridges connected continents. Shores extended far beyond their current boundaries. When the ice melted, the water returned, fast and merciless. Anything built too close to the edge disappeared. What makes this unsettling is how final that disappearance can be. On land, ruins attract attention. Underwater, they vanish from memory. No erosion marks their presence. No traveler stumbles upon them. They exist outside human awareness. A structure could be real, measurable, and massive, yet effectively non-existent to history. If an advanced culture lived near the sea and was destroyed by sudden flooding or collapse, it might leave no trace on land at all. Its memory would survive only as myth, and one region of the ocean has always seemed eager to erase things. Why the Bermuda Triangle was dismissed. The Bermuda Triangle did not begin as a joke, but it slowly became one. Early reports of missing ships and aircraft were treated seriously, often investigated by naval authorities and insurance companies. Over time, however, these incidents were absorbed into popular culture. Sensational books, late-night television, and exaggerated headlines turned the region into entertainment. Green fogs, vanishing planes, and spinning compasses became the focus. The mystery was simplified and repeated until it lost credibility. What might have been a subject of careful study was repackaged as spectacle. This transformation had a powerful effect on science. Serious researchers learned quickly that even mentioning the Bermuda Triangle could damage their reputation. Academic careers are built on trust, peer review, and cautious language. Anything linked to mystery or folklore becomes radioactive. Grants disappear. Journals hesitate. Colleagues distance themselves. As a result, the region became academically untouchable. Scientists did not prove there was nothing unusual there. They simply stopped looking. Silence replaced investigation. The irony is that many of the surface-level claims were never the real issue. Weather patterns, navigation errors, and human mistakes can explain many disappearances. That much is true. But the fixation on the sky distracted everyone from what lay below. The ocean floor beneath the Bermuda Triangle was rarely discussed. It did not fit the narrative of quick thrills and dramatic vanishings. Sonar surveys were sparse. Deep-sea mapping was incomplete. What could not be seen was ignored. This neglect created a blind spot. While debates raged about magnets and clouds, the seabed remained largely unexamined. The region sits at a complex intersection of tectonic plates, deep trenches, and underwater plateaus. Geological processes there are slow, powerful, and capable of dramatic change. Submerged landscapes exist that were once above water during periods of lower sea level, but this required time, funding, and patience to study, none of which aligned with either pop culture or academic caution. As decades passed, the Bermuda Triangle became something worse than misunderstood. It became unfashionable. Mentioning it invited ridicule. Even legitimate oceanographic research avoided the name entirely, opting for neutral geographic terms. This created an illusion of closure. The public believed the mystery had been solved, when in reality it had simply been abandoned. No grand conclusion was reached. The file was closed without reading its contents. This dismissal had another consequence. When real anomalies appeared, they were easier to ignore. Any unexpected data could be written off as error, coincidence, or misinterpretation. No one wanted to be the person reopening a subject already labeled as nonsense. The stigma was too strong. This cultural bias ensured that when something genuinely unusual appeared, it would arrive in silence. The most important detail is this. The real anomaly was never dramatic disappearances or spinning needles. It was the lack of attention to the seabed itself. The deep ocean does not care about reputations or trends. It holds whatever history placed there. And because the Bermuda Triangle had been reduced to a punchline, no one was seriously studying what lay beneath its waters. And in 2001, no one was looking for history at all. A business deal that changed everything. The discovery that would later ignite global debate did not begin with curiosity about lost civilizations or ancient myths. It began with money. In the late 1990s, Cuba was under heavy economic pressure, isolated from global markets, and desperate for hard currency. Its surrounding waters, however, held something valuable. For centuries, Spanish ships carrying silver, gold, and precious stones had sunk during storms or pirate attacks in the Caribbean. These wrecks were known, documented, and largely untouched at great depths. Recovering them was not history. It was business. A Canadian company specializing in deep-sea technology signed a straightforward contract with the Cuban government. The deal was simple. The company would locate sunken ships using advanced sonar systems, recover valuable cargo, and split the profits. There were no academic partners, no historians, no universities. This was not archaeology in the traditional sense. No one cared about pottery shards or cultural context. The goal was metal, weight, and resale value. Every day at sea had a cost, and every scan needed to justify that expense. The people chosen for the mission reflected this mindset. The expedition was led by engineers, surveyors, and ocean technologists. These were professionals trained to interpret data, calibrate instruments, and solve mechanical problems under pressure. They were not chasing legends. They did not believe in underwater cities or ancient catastrophes. Their focus was narrow and practical. Find anomalies consistent with shipwrecks. Identify metal signatures. Mark coordinates. Move on. The research vessel moved methodically across assigned search grids. Sonar equipment was towed behind the ship, sweeping the sea floor in wide arcs. Most days were repetitive. Screens showed uneven terrain, sediment ripples, and occasional debris. When something appeared, it was usually a collapsed hull or scattered cargo, exactly what they expected. There was no sense of discovery beyond financial calculation. If the wreck was deep, complex, or unprofitable, it was logged and ignored. This mindset is important. The team had no incentive to exaggerate or misinterpret what they saw. In fact, the opposite was true. Any anomaly that was not clearly a shipwreck represented lost time and money. Strange readings were problems, not opportunities. Equipment errors had to be ruled out quickly so the search could continue. This was a commercial operation operating on tight margins and stricter logic than most academic expeditions. That is why what happened next mattered. When the instruments began showing shapes that did not match known wreck patterns, the reaction was not excitement. It was confusion. Straight lines, sharp angles, and large geometric forms did not align with centuries-old wooden ships. There was no cargo scatter, no metal concentration, no collapse pattern. From a business perspective, it made no sense. The team initially assumed the equipment was malfunctioning. They recalibrated systems, adjusted frequencies, and rescanned the area. Each pass returned the same result. Whatever was down there was solid, large, and organized. It did not resemble profit. It did not resemble geology either. The data refused to fit expectations, and that made it impossible to ignore. But treasure was not what their instruments found. The sonar that drew a city. Side-scan sonar is not designed to imagine shapes. It records reflections of sound, translating them into light and shadow. Hard surfaces return strong signals. Soft sediment absorbs them. When an object rises above the seabed, it creates a dark acoustic shadow behind it. This is not interpretation or guesswork. It is physics. The team had used this technology for years, mapping wrecks and geological features across the Caribbean. They knew what random seabed looked like, and they knew what it did not. What appeared on the screens during that survey pass was wrong in a very specific way. Instead of chaotic patterns shaped by currents and erosion, the sonar image showed order. Lines ran parallel to one another. Angles intersected cleanly. Shapes repeated with consistent spacing. Nature rarely builds like this. Geological formations curve, fracture, and scatter. Even coral structures follow organic rules. Straight lines and right angles exist in nature, but not in organized clusters spanning large areas. The operators assumed interference. Electrical noise, software glitches, or misaligned sensors can distort sonar images. The immediate response was to verify the equipment. Frequencies were adjusted. The vessel changed course. The same area was scanned again from a different angle. The results did not change. The shapes remained fixed in position, scale, and orientation. They cast acoustic shadows of consistent length, indicating height and mass. This was not a flat pattern on sand. These were three-dimensional structures rising from the seafloor. As the data accumulated, the picture became harder to dismiss. The mapped area covered roughly 2 square kilometers. Within it were large rectangular forms, stepped shapes resembling platforms, and triangular outlines that looked eerily symmetrical. Some features appeared aligned along what could only be described as streets. Intersections formed near-perfect right angles. The spacing between structures suggested planning rather than chance. No known geological process in that region could account for such uniformity. What unsettled the team most was the scale. These were not small formations. Some structures appeared tens of meters across. Their acoustic shadows suggested vertical relief comparable to multi-story buildings. This was far beyond the resolution of coincidence. The sonar was effectively sketching something vast and deliberate, like a blueprint etched into darkness. When printed and laid out on a table, the images resembled an aerial photograph taken from high above a city. The reaction on board shifted from skepticism to unease. No one wanted to say the word city, but everyone was thinking it. Engineers are trained to distrust extraordinary explanations. They look for errors, artifacts, and alternative causes. Every technical excuse was exhausted. The data was clean. The equipment was functioning correctly. The shapes were consistent across multiple passes. The anomaly was not going away. This presented a problem. The mission was not equipped to interpret such a find. There were no archaeologists on board, no geologists specializing in deep-sea structures. More importantly, sonar alone could not provide certainty. Sound could show form, but not material. It could suggest geometry, but not origin. To move forward, they needed visual confirmation. Cameras, light, and direct observation were the only way to resolve what the sonar was implying. At that moment, the expedition crossed an invisible line. They were no longer searching for shipwrecks. They were staring at something that challenged basic assumptions about what could exist at that depth. Sound had revealed the outline of a mystery, but it could not explain it. Sound was no longer enough. They needed eyes. The drone descent into absolute darkness. Lowering a robotic submersible into deep water is a slow and deliberate act, closer to a surgical procedure than exploration. Every seal, cable, and thruster must work perfectly, because failure at depth means permanent loss. As the drone slipped beneath the surface, daylight faded quickly. Within minutes, the water shifted from blue to black. At 700 meters, there is no ambient light at all. The ocean becomes a void, silent and crushing, where pressure reaches levels capable of destroying unprotected machinery in seconds. The descent was monitored in real time from the control room. Numbers scrolled across screens. Depth increased. Temperature dropped. The drone's lights remained off at first, conserving power as it passed through layers of drifting particles known as marine snow. These are the remains of life from above, slowly falling into darkness. Nothing moved except the robot itself. Then the seabed appeared on the monitors, a flat, pale expanse emerging from the black. When the lights activated, the effect was immediate and unsettling. Instead of irregular rock or sediment, the cameras illuminated surfaces that were flat and smooth. Massive stone blocks lay arranged side by side. Their edges were sharp. Their faces were even. These were not boulders scattered by chance. They were placed. Some blocks stood alone like monuments. Others formed long, continuous walls. The scale was impossible to ignore. Individual stones measured several meters across, weighing tens of tons. The camera glided closer, tracing surfaces that showed little sign of natural fracture. At such depths, biological growth is minimal, but sediment usually coats everything over time. Here, the stone appeared strangely clean. The texture was uniform, light in color, and sharply contrasted against the dark seabed. The drone's perspective revealed repeating patterns, as if the stones had been cut to specification. This was not erosion. This was construction. As the robot moved forward, the layout became more disturbing. Some structures rose higher than others, forming stepped shapes. Others appeared rectangular from above, with open spaces inside. When the drone angled its camera downward into these voids, darkness stretched inward, suggesting interior cavities. Natural rock formations rarely produce hollow spaces with straight boundaries. Caves form irregularly. These spaces did not. They looked intentional, like rooms or foundations. The operators fell silent. No one needed to speak. The implications were forming in real time. If these were buildings, they were ancient. If they were ancient, they should not exist. The depth alone ruled out any known civilization. No human culture in accepted history could have built structures here. To do so, the land would have needed to be dry. That meant a past radically different from what textbooks describe. The drone continued its slow survey, revealing more of the site. Surfaces aligned at right angles, pathways extended between structures. The layout suggested planning, not randomness. Even under layers of sediment and time, the order remained visible. Whatever had placed these stones had done so with purpose. Yet the greatest shock was not the presence of stone itself. Stone can be explained away by geology if one tries hard enough. What could not be easily dismissed was intention. Weight, symmetry, repetition, and hollow spaces do not appear together by accident. They point toward design. But stone alone was not the greatest problem. The age that breaks history. Once the initial shock faded, a colder question took its place. Not what the structures were, but when they could have been built. Stone does not lie about depth. At 700 meters below the surface, pressure and darkness make construction impossible. If these structures were placed by intelligent hands, they had to be built when the land was dry. That assumption forced the investigation out of engineering and into geology, where time becomes the most dangerous variable of all. Geological data from the region painted an uncomfortable picture. The seabed near western Cuba sits on a limestone platform shaped by slow tectonic movement. These plates do not rise and fall quickly. For a landmass to sink hundreds of meters requires either immense time or catastrophic collapse. Sea level records offered only limited relief. During the last ice age, oceans were lower, but not by 700 meters. That meant the land itself had to move, not the water alone. Experts examined fault lines, seismic history, and crustal behavior across the Caribbean basin. The conclusion was grim. To place this site above water through gradual geological processes, one would need to rewind time tens of thousands of years, possibly more. Not 5,000, not 10,000, far earlier than the birth of agriculture, cities, or written language. At that point in human history, according to accepted models, people lived in small groups, using simple tools, leaving little permanent trace. This is where the problem becomes explosive. If the structures are artificial, then the timeline of human development is incomplete. Entire chapters would be missing. A culture capable of cutting, transporting, and assembling massive stone blocks would require organization, knowledge, and labor, far beyond what is currently believed possible for that era. Such a civilization would have left marks elsewhere: tools, artifacts, settlements, yet none are clearly recognized. The alternative explanation is equally unsettling: that nature itself created the appearance of a city. Geologists proposed mechanisms such as fracturing, orthogonal cracking, and mineral crystallization. Certain rock formations can break along straight lines. In rare cases, stone can form geometric patterns, but these processes typically occur on a limited scale. They do not produce repeated structures, aligned layouts, and hollow spaces over kilometers. Random processes do not arrange themselves like urban planning. A third possibility briefly entered the discussion: catastrophic collapse. Instead of slow sinking, the land could have dropped suddenly due to seismic failure. If a coastal settlement existed near a tectonic fault, a massive earthquake could have sent it plunging into the deep in a matter of hours. This would preserve the structures in place, protected from erosion by immediate submersion. Such events are rare, but not impossible in tectonically active regions. Even this explanation creates problems. A civilization capable of building stone cities would still need to exist far earlier than history allows. Disaster can erase evidence, but not the requirements for construction. The tools, skills, and organization needed would still have existed somewhere before the fall. Their absence from the archaeological record becomes harder to ignore. At this stage, experts faced a choice: accept that history is incomplete, or insist that the structures are natural despite their order. Both options carry consequences. One rewrites human history. The other demands geological behavior never observed at this scale. Neither is comfortable. Neither fits neatly within established frameworks. That discomfort explains the hesitation that followed. This was no longer about one anomaly. It was about the foundation of what is taught, published, and believed. The deeper the analysis went, the less stable the ground became. And both answers terrified experts. Silence, fear, and frozen research. After the initial reports surfaced, many expected a rush of follow-up expeditions. The discovery appeared too large to ignore, too disruptive to fade quietly. But the opposite happened. Research slowed, then stopped. One of the first barriers was political. The waters where the structures were found fell under Cuban jurisdiction at a time when international relations were strained. Economic embargoes restricted cooperation. Universities, research institutions, and private firms from certain countries were legally barred from operating there. Even sharing data became complicated. What should have been a global scientific effort was trapped inside geopolitical walls. Money delivered the second blow. Deep-sea exploration is brutally expensive. Research vessels cost tens of thousands of dollars per day to operate. Specialized submersibles, crews, fuel, and analysis push costs into the millions. Investors are willing to fund such missions when returns are clear. Gold, silver, artifacts that can be displayed or sold. Stone blocks on the ocean floor do not fit that model. They cannot be auctioned. They cannot be transported easily. They offer no immediate financial return. As soon as it became clear that the site was not a treasure trove in the traditional sense, interest evaporated. The original expedition had been built around profit, not preservation. Once profit disappeared, so did momentum. Governments were reluctant to spend public funds on something that challenged established history without guaranteed results. Private investors walked away. The project entered a quiet limbo. Data was archived. Equipment was reassigned. What had briefly shaken assumptions was filed away as unresolved. Inside academic circles, a different fear took hold. Science advances through consensus, but consensus can harden into defense. Proposing that a city might exist beneath the ocean, older than known civilizations, was not just bold. It was dangerous. Careers depend on credibility. Publishing controversial interpretations invites scrutiny, ridicule, and professional isolation. Researchers who push too far outside accepted timelines risk losing funding, positions, and influence. Silence became the safer option. This does not require conspiracy, it only requires incentives. A geologist who labels the site an unusual natural formation faces little risk. A researcher who suggests a lost civilization tens of thousands of years old invites attack. Peer review is unforgiving toward claims that disrupt foundational models. Extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, and obtaining that evidence requires funding that no one wanted to provide. The cycle fed itself. No evidence meant no funding. No funding meant no evidence. Over time, the story faded from mainstream discussion. Media interest shifted elsewhere. New discoveries replaced old ones. The site remained untouched, unchanged, waiting. Its existence became something whispered about in documentaries and forums, rarely mentioned in serious journals, not disproven, simply ignored. This kind of silence has precedent. History is full of discoveries that were set aside because they did not fit expectations, data that challenged timelines, artifacts that appeared too advanced, structures found in inconvenient places. Often these findings linger for decades before being reevaluated. Sometimes they never are. The absence of investigation becomes mistaken for absence of truth. Yet while science turned away, stories did not. Oral traditions, ancient legends, and myths continued to speak of lands swallowed by the sea. They described cities lost in sudden floods, people forced to flee, knowledge buried beneath water. These stories survived not because they were proven, but because they were remembered. They persisted in cultures long dismissed as symbolic or fictional, but myths remembered what science forgot. The city that waits beneath us. Across cultures and continents, stories persist of lands swallowed by the ocean. These legends are often dismissed as metaphor, but their consistency is difficult to ignore. From the Americas to the Mediterranean, ancient peoples spoke of great floods, vanished islands, and cities consumed in a single catastrophic moment. These were not slow declines, but sudden endings. In many versions, survivors carried fragments of knowledge to new lands, preserving memory through story rather than stone. When examined closely, these myths share a core idea. Something important was lost to the sea. For centuries, such stories had no place in scientific discussion. Without physical evidence, they remained in the realm of imagination. But the discovery of submerged coastlines, drowned river valleys, and underwater ruins around the world has begun to change that view. Sea levels have risen dramatically in Earth's past. Entire landscapes that once supported human life now lie far offshore. Fishing villages, stone circles, and ancient roads have already been found beneath shallow waters. The possibility that larger settlements existed is no longer unthinkable. It is simply unexplored. The structures near Cuba sit far beyond those shallow zones, locked in darkness and pressure. They exist at a depth that discourages curiosity. Yet technology has changed. Autonomous underwater vehicles can now map terrain with precision unimaginable decades ago. Laser scanning systems can penetrate sediment. Artificial intelligence can analyze sonar data and identify patterns invisible to human eyes. The tools to return exist. What is missing is the decision to use them. That hesitation is not technical, it is psychological. Returning to the site risks confirming something uncomfortable. If the structures are natural, decades of speculation collapse into disappointment. If they are artificial, history itself fractures. Textbooks would need revision. Long-held assumptions about human development would weaken. Institutions built on those assumptions would face pressure. It is easier to leave the city undisturbed than to confront what it might reveal. So the site remains untouched. Cold water flows through its streets. Marine life drifts past stone faces that may once have seen sunlight. Sediment settles slowly, millimeter by millimeter, preserving edges and angles. The ocean acts as both shield and jailer. It protects the structures from decay while keeping them beyond reach. Time passes without urgency. The city does not demand attention. It simply waits. This waiting creates a strange tension. The coordinates are known. The data exists. The images remain archived. At any moment, a well-funded expedition could descend again, clear sediment, and examine the stone directly. A single recovered sample could answer years of debate, but no one moves. The silence continues, reinforced by caution and comfort. There is something unsettling about that stillness, the idea that beneath the surface lies evidence of a forgotten chapter. Untouched, not because it is unreachable, but because it is inconvenient. The city challenges the belief that human progress is a straight line. It suggests repetition, loss, and vulnerability. It reminds us that oceans rise, land falls, and knowledge can disappear. For now, the city remains where it is, beyond light, beyond noise, beyond argument. It exists whether acknowledged or not. It does not need belief to remain real. It only requires time, and time is something the ocean has in abundance. And one day, someone will have to decide whether to look again. If this discovery is real, it changes everything we think we know about human history. If it is ignored, it reveals something even darker: our fear of the truth. Share your theory in the comments. Like and subscribe for more hidden history. And watch the next video on screen, because some secrets refuse to stay buried forever.